Welcome back into Conference USA Podcast Roundtable, where we are going to preview our Week 0 matchup, the only matchup in Conference USA that is tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Central kickoff there in Bowling Green. Joining us is Ben of Sports of SHSU / March to the Pod. I'm your host, Jake Bolden of the Blue Raider Pod, but it's not about me. It's about our friend here, Ben, of course, our other friend, Moffitt, over at Topper Talk, who isn't with us, if you may notice right now, but he's making his way here, hopefully near the end of our episode where he can give us a little bit more Topper breakdown. But Ben, happy to have you back.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to talk about an exciting Week 0 matchup, and just glad football's back.
It's interesting being a part of this Week 0, and really Sam Houston, in all regards, kind of has the butt end of it. If I remember right, they've got this matchup Saturday, and they kind of have a short week going into everyone else's Week 1. How, as a fan, I'm sure you want all the football you can, but 2 games in 6 days is kind of tough.
It is tough. It's a really tough opening month. You start with Week 0, 55 new scholarship players, 33 of which got there the first week of summer. So one less week of preparation with a Week 0 game, one less week to bond. So you have that, and then it's a 6-day week playing UNLV next Friday, who's kind of a dark horse contender for the playoff in the group of 5, group of 6. And then you travel out to Hawaii, which is a really tough matchup, a team that's going to have a good offense this year. Then you play Texas. So it's a pretty daunting first month for Sam Houston that gets underway tomorrow night.
I know you did our preview, as did all of our podcasts here at the Roundtable last weekend. Just kind of touch base, fill us in for those that might have missed that. Phil Longo, one of the few coaches in this conference. I say few, over half the conference is now full of first-year coaches this year. How do you think how Coach Longo has kind of fared this offseason?
Yeah, it's a ton of turnover. As people know, Casey Keeler left to go to Temple. On the offensive side of the ball, you retained a decent amount of guys. 4 of your 5 starters that started the majority of the games last year come back. You returned your starting quarterback in Hunter Watson, which was nice. Returned a couple of your top receivers. I thought they did a really good job in the portal, kind of revamping the running back room, which I think is going to be featured pretty heavily in the offense. So the offense is in a pretty good spot, and people know Phil Longo is an air raid guy, going to move fast, a lot of tempo, typically going to put up a lot of points. The biggest point of emphasis is the defense. You lose your top, I believe it's 16 tacklers, your entire defensive staff, and that's the big area of concern. I think they did a good job in the secondary, filling some holes, but there's some legitimate concerns in the front 7 that I think could really hurt this team. So I think they probably did as good of a job as they could, especially considered he got hired late also. There was almost a 19-day gap between when Keeler left and when Longo got hired, which was in the middle of the portal season, so that was a part of it too. So there's definitely some holes, but they did about as much as they could this offseason.
I think that last part is going to be a recurring theme that I think a lot of fans may disregard. And as an MTSU fan who experienced that growing pain last year, you like to think getting that coach quickly. I mean, 19 days is relatively fast, but 19 days lost in portal season is a very long time, and you're kind of scraping by with what you got. But one of the big things you mentioned there was getting your quarterback back, which before we get into some players to know on the Sam Houston side, let's talk a little bit about what happened last year. Midweek game, kind of in the middle of the season, Western travels to Huntsville to play the Bearcats. It's a 31-14 game. Doesn't look enticing, but really it was a good football game until that second half, which, you can fill in the blank here, but I know Hunter Watson didn't come out that second half, whether it was injury or not. It didn't end the season. We got to see Jace Bauer perform, but the offense just went stale, and really you can kind of carry that over to the rest of the season. The offense that was a turning point for the Bearcats last year.
Yeah, it was a large part. I was on the sideline for that game at Bauer Stadium, actually, and you could just feel the energy kind of be sucked out of the team and the stadium that night when Hunter went down and didn't come back in for that second half, and that was a big part of it. Special teams was a big part also. Western hit I believe it was a 55-yard field goal, and then you had a 25-yard field goal blocked. So that was a big swing, and then after that field goal blocked, they scored an 88-yard touchdown. So just a lot of big plays in that game that really didn't go your way, and Western came out on top. And I think once Hunter went down, you could kind of feel things started to shift towards Western Kentucky's side.
Well, I guess the big question is that I'm going to ask, relaying off of that, that was obviously what changed that game for you guys, and even as I said, for the rest of the year, because the offense just kind of went stale. I know you got a new coach. I know you got a lot of new guys, but Hunter's back. You would hope he's healthy through the first 4 quarters of the season. Is it that obvious that that's the biggest difference between what's going to happen this Saturday?
Yeah, I think that's the hope, and the hope is you can score some more points because you're going to have to with this defense, and definitely looks like Hunter is the guy for tomorrow, so he's going to be the guy. And a team that lost a lot of leadership off of last year's team, you lost all 10 guys that were from the national title team back in 2020. So Hunter's kind of one of the veteran leaders, and I think he could be the difference tomorrow night. And they're going to have to put up a lot of points, and it's kind of on his shoulders to do it.
Tell me now some other names. I know Hunters obviously want to know, and I look at your depth chart, and I can see Phil Longo doing that head coach stuff before their first game. I don't see Elijah Green at running back. There's just some funny business. So tell me, you know more than I do. What are the names that we should know that maybe we don't see on that depth chart?
Yeah, it's certainly it's an interesting depth chart. Antavius Fish is listed as the defensive play caller in the game notes, and he's not even listed as a starter. So it's just you could tell from the start it's fishy.
Calling
But
from
on
the sidelines, right?
yeah, well, he's the one. He's the signal caller. He has the dot for the defense. So on the offensive side, obviously Hunter Watson, like we talked about, Elijah Green looks to kind of be the lead back. Longo has said he wants to feature up to 3 running backs. I think those other 2 would be Shane Porter, the transfer from North Texas, and Alton McGaskill, transfer from Arizona State. He's also been at Colorado and Houston. And then you've got a decent amount of weapons on the outside as well. You return Quavez Humphreys and Michael Phoenix, who were 2 of your top 4 guys last year. So they're going to be a big part of the offense. Malik Phillips was your second leading receiver in 2023, but redshirted last year. He's back. He's in that slot role that the air raid offense likes to feature a lot. And then you've got a couple like burners, guys just with a lot of speed that I think fit into this offense with Avion Smith-Mack, Tim Burns, Lottie Agkasum. So pretty deep at the receiver position and in the skill room in general on the offense. So the offense looks pretty good. The defense is obviously a huge question. I think the 3 names to know at all 3 levels, the first level defensive line, Keelan Cox, transfer from Texas Southern, has been, I think this is his 5th college in 6 years, but he spent time at Alabama, Wyoming, was a big recruit coming out of Houston back in the day. But he had a really big year at FCS Texas Southern last year. Finally popped. He's got great size on the edge, so he's one to watch for there. Antavius Fish, who I just mentioned, transfer from Akron, has a couple hundred career tackles from his time there, was a starter for 2 years. He's going to be one of the leaders on the defense and one of the captains. And then on the back end, another guy that wasn't listed as a starter, CJ Brown, coming over from Bowling Green, was an all-MAC player 2 years ago. Another guy with a ton of snaps, a ton of experience. And so those are probably the 3 biggest names to watch for on the defense.
Look forward to that, and I'll do my best to help Steven here go over some Western Kentucky guys. I mean, the big one coming out of Bowling Green that everyone's got to know, and if you don't, you should be listening to the podcast roundtable. We've talked about him ad nauseum at this point, but Maverick McIver, the Abilene Christian transfer, just something Tyson Helton, it is kind of a steady stable for him. It's a revolving door of quarterbacks, but one thing you can count on, they're going to have a good one. And Maverick, I think it's 8,000 yards he eclipsed in his 3 seasons at Abilene. Fully anticipate him to have a fantastic year this year. You talked a little bit about the worries on the defense, particularly in that front 7. I know they've got that Lavelle Wright guy, Kentucky transfer, graduate from Louisville, local talent that I think is talking about that ground and pound that they might try to do. I know they're going to try to put the ball in the air, but having that duality of being able to run the ball on top of a good arm like McIver is going to be, I would assume, going to be a challenge in that first matchup.
Right, yeah, and they loaded up on their weapons at receiver especially too. I mean, there's some questions in the running back room, but I think they've got enough. But a guy like Matthew Henry, who was an FCS All-American last year, Jarius Mack and Kelby Williams, guys at the G5 level that had 400 or 500 yard seasons. So, like you said, the way they kind of shaped their team in the portal, they're probably going to want to air it out, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them try to at least run the ball a little bit, just with the legitimate front 7 concerns that Sam Houston has coming into this year.
And we're probably getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but from a Sam Houston perspective, what do you need to see to see that this team is what it needs to be at least contenders? Because I'm sure you're kind of on the fence from what I've learned, and we'll talk about everyone's picks this week. But what do you need to see to feel like this team is a contender?
I think you just need to see a competent defense. I mean, this is an offense that you feel pretty good about. They can go probably score 27 to 30 points a game on a pretty consistent basis, but are they going to give up 40 to 45 a game and then you're just not able to win? So I think the biggest thing to watch for is can the defense just be competent? Can they hold teams to somewhere around 30 points per game? Because if they can, I think they'll be in a decent spot, but that's a big question, and even I don't know if they can, just based on the personnel and depth that they have. So if they can have a competent defense, I think they have a chance to have a good year, but it's a big question mark for this team.
And it's got to be tough. I mean, coming off last year, like the defense is what kept you in it. Yeah. Like it's got to be. It's just a different outlook there in Huntsville.
Yeah, it's a complete 180, and it's really done this twice within the last decade. Longo's first term here, and when Casey Keeler first got here, kind of 2014 to 2019, it was we're going to go score 50 points a game, and that got you to the FCS quarterfinals, FCS semifinals. They made a switch in 2019, hired a new strength coach, made an emphasis on the defensive side of the ball, and really turned it into a defensive heavy team, and that was what was going to lead the team. And from 2019 to 2024, you had that emphasis, and now it looks like you're going back the other direction. And we'll see what kind of success they have with the offense-oriented team.
This might be a silly question, but do you like conference play right out the gate?
I think I would if it wasn't Western Kentucky. I think if you got a Kennesaw State or like a Missouri State or Delaware, it might be a little more manageable. But with the circumstances that Sam Houston has, I don't know how much I like it, but I think it's great for the conference. I think it's great for TV, a lot of eyes on the conference. So from that perspective, I like it. From having to play Western Kentucky week 0, not a big fan of it from kind of a fan perspective.
Let me be devil's advocate. If there was ever an opportunity to slip up, it'd be week 0. So I could see, if I'm going to be an optimist as an MTSU fan, anti-WKU, maybe this is the week you do it. I can't make any promises, but I like to see that other side of the coin that, maybe Western doesn't have things ironed out. And of course, right. Moff was here. He could defend himself, but that's kind of how I see it. If I were going to play a championship contender, maybe the first week would be the time to do it.
Yeah, and just previewing WKU this past week, they've got a lot of turnover too. I mean, obviously one of the top portal classes in the group of 5, which is great, but early turnaround with week 0, I think they're replacing 16 starters from the end of last year, so pretty much identical to what Sam Houston's doing. So a lot of question marks there. So like you said, playing devil's advocate, you might get them at the right time where they haven't clicked just yet, and maybe you can catch them sleeping.
Well, we'll go over those picks here in just a second, but we need to take a quick break and thank our sponsor, general contractor, the Conseco. Conseco Group has been transforming visions into reality since 1987. Known for making the impossible possible, they specialize in pre-construction consulting, construction management, design build, and renovations. With a hands-on, client-focused approach, Conseco Group consistently delivers high-quality results while maximizing investment. Based in Nashville and trusted across Middle Tennessee, their reach spans the entire Southeast. Conseco Group, building excellence one project at a time. Learn more at consecogroup.com or call 615-298-9907. Thanks again to the Conseco Group for sponsoring this segment of the show. We're going over the pick'em for this week. The only game on the Conference USA slate that is WKU and Sam Houston. Again, that kickoff is tomorrow at 6 p.m. It's on CBS Sports Network, nationally televised. All eyes, at least from the podcast roundtable, will be there. I'm certainly excited to see what Western Kentucky has to offer, but it seems the rest of the conference is in that same boat, Ben. No one really vying for a WKU upset. They are a 10.5-point favorite. But our friends over at Jacksonville State, the 700 Pelham Road podcast, surprisingly, and they were one of the first to turn it in. They were adamant. Sam Houston has the potential to get a win. And if it's anything like they did last year, they're just looking for those underdog points that we have in our standings. But, Ben, do you see there's any chance that might happen?
There's definitely a shot. Like you said, with week zero, so many unknowns. You don't know how teams are going to click right off the bat. I think there's definitely a shot. And if your offense um, can find that spark early on and maybe you can hold WKU down a little bit, I think there's a chance. But WKU just feels like that one team in football that we have not been able to get over the hump with. You came in last year off a big bye week. They were coming off a short week, couldn't get it done, turned the ball over twice inside the 10-yard line 2 years ago and lost by 5. So I don't know what it is about WKU. It just kind of feels like you can't get over the hump, but we'll see if they can tomorrow night.
Yeah, I have to side, and really, it has more to do. I've been a skeptic this offseason with what Sam Houston was able to do, just because I've lived that experience of waiting to hire the coach, and then he has to find the right guys. And again, keeping your quarterback, again, same situation. We kept Vadiato on that transition to Mason, but sometimes it's just not enough. And I think for you feel more confident in the offense. For us, it was the vice versa. I felt more confidence in defense, but collectively, it just wasn't a good team. Not saying that Sam Houston won't have those same growing pains, but from MTSU's perspective, it was just bad. 3 wins was just a bad year.
Yeah, and it's so much transition. 55 out of the 85 scholarship guys are brand new, and I think another big part of it, I briefly mentioned it a few minutes ago, but the leadership of this team had been the same for half a decade. The guys that were sophomore and junior leaders on the national championship team in 2020, 2021 were here up until last year, pretty much, and that they kind of finished their run out with a bowl victory. And I think losing that leadership is really going to hurt this team, especially with it being a younger team. So many new guys. It's a team that last year I think was 92% from Texas. This year I think it's about 60%. So you kind of lose that Texas identity, which I think could be an issue. So it's a real concern coming into this year.
You bring up the Texas recruiting grounds, and obviously it's always a hotbed for all programs, not just those in Texas. Give us a little insight here on Longo's approach. Is he hitting that area heavily? I would hope so, being in Texas. But do you see a shift from that?
Yeah, in his introductory press conference and in interviews, he says Texas is the priority, which it should be. And you can, and what Keeler said, and he said the exact same thing, is you can build a championship team within a 3-hour radius of Huntsville, which is true. But that just didn't really happen in the portal. I think about 2/3 of our portal additions were from out of state. Part of that is you just have to take who you can get at that point. So I think that was a part for concern. You have signed 4 high school kids, which is a small class. 3 of the 4 of them have been from the Houston area. One was from Indiana. So I think you're starting to see it kind of shift back towards Texas, at least at the high school level. But through the portal, it was definitely Cali JUCO guys for the most part. Some other like Mississippi JUCOs kind of thing, and then a little bit of Texas mixed in. So we'll see what it looks like moving forward, but the portal side was definitely not Texas, and the high school side looks like they are trying to get into Texas a little more.
And you're getting some programs that are getting out of your recruiting grounds. La Tech's leaving, UTEP's leaving. The only one that you might really be vying for, at least in the Texas space, is going to be New Mexico State. And really, other than that, you kind of own the Cali side of things. I know MTSU themselves pulled some guys out of the JUCO Cali ranks, but that's who's going to probably alleviate some pressure. But I want to get into the next question about NIL. That's always the big topic that everyone wants to know. How healthy would you say Sam Houston's NIL is in that space?
Yeah, for football, it's not. I don't know what Missouri State and Delaware bring in, but it was definitely last in the conference last year, and they kind of made wine out of water. I don't know if that's going to be the case with this staff. I know the resources just have not been there. The school also hasn't released publicly or internally, from what I've been told, revenue sharing numbers, and that still isn't set up. So that's a big concern as well. So they're definitely lacking on the NIL rev share side for football. Some of the other sports at Sam Houston are in a pretty good spot, some of the other big sports, but football's in a pretty rough spot, and it's definitely an area of concern moving forward. I think you were able to get by with bringing back about 1/3 of last year's roster, which helped, and then a lot of these coaches were able to pull from previous relationships they had, like an Elijah Green at running back, a Cecil Powell at DB. He had a connection with our defensive coordinator, but starting next year, it's going to be interesting to see how they can kind of build when they don't have the money that a lot of other programs have.
being a Sam Houston fan has got to be one of the most roller coaster. I mean, not just I'm not talking football. I mean basketball. You come off a
Yeah.
regular season title, you go to last place this last year. Sorry,
Yeah.
you're next to last. Baseball has probably a better introductory season than you might imagine, and then they're one of the bottom teams this
Worst
last year. I
season in
mean,
school history. Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't imagine this roller coaster ride y'all have been on these last 2 years.
Yeah, and the fan base has, I would say, not adapted extremely well to it. But I think one thing that I've tried to beat home is, I mean, this is not the Southland Conference. You can compete in football because, I mean, a lot of these programs have moved up with you and you're ahead of a couple of them, which helps. But, I mean, women's basketball, volleyball, softball, baseball, I mean, this is not the Southland Conference. And you're seeing a lot of these sports that would traditionally win the conference or always compete at a high level really start to struggle kind of across the board. And that's just going to be the norm. And it's part of the growing pains of moving up to this kind of level.
Before we get to our last segment, we're going to be talking betting. If anyone here's the gambler, I know you're going to want all the insight on that. But Ben, before we do that, and again, hopefully Moffitt can join us here in these last few minutes. Tell us, March to the Pod. You know, what's that release schedule look like? I know you guys do a weekly show. What does that schedule look like?
Yeah, so we go live Wednesdays at 4 o'clock. So we're live on YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. And then it's typically uploaded to our streaming platforms that night. And then we'll have short clips throughout the week on all those platforms. So you can catch us live at 4 o'clock on Wednesdays, March number 2, the pod, on all the social media platforms. And then we'll have content throughout the week as well.
Well, I know Moff again. If he's going to be able to make it here in these last closing minutes, him and Tyler over at Topper Talk, they do a lot of their content. They just got through all their positional breakdowns. So if you want even more in-depth stuff on the Toppers, they've got it covered for you there on their YouTube. Speaking of the devil, there he is. He's making it in the last second. Moff, I was just plugging your show real quick while we're on that topic. When do you guys release? What's kind of the upload schedule for you guys in season?
We typically record on and release on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, before we get to the October midweek game. So usually a Tuesday release date is going to be what we're looking at.
So we're always competing for that Tuesday spot in our Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky space. But Moff, first of all, glad to have you on. I know you're dealing with life. Tell us a little bit the excitement there in Bowling Green. Real quick, do you don't like the conference game week 0 matchup?
It's different. It's been a few years. This happened to us. This will be the third time since 2015 that we've had a conference game to open the season. So it's not unfamiliar territory, in the last 10 years. But I like it. It makes the game mean something. And especially just looking at this matchup, it feels like there's some pros and some cons to both of our teams as far as, maybe having an advantage because we're playing, a whole new team and coaching staff in week 0. Whereas if we played them in week 5 or 6 and they were starting to put it together with all those new pieces, it could be a completely different ball game. So I think week 0 is kind of a variable that is going to play to one of our advantages, and hopefully it's ours.
Now, tell me this. We've gone through all of Sam Houston, and they're kind of in that space where we know the offense looks good on paper. The defense is kind of questionable. We know you guys are – I wouldn't say your defense is as questionable as what they're experiencing there at Sam Houston. But what do you need to see tomorrow night to feel like this team is a contender like it always is under Coach Helton?
I think we need to see a little bit more consistency on offense. We've kind of been through, a change in offensive coordinator. It feels like all 6 years under Coach Helton. And last year was just kind of an experiment with an offensive coordinator that Coach Helton knew from a previous stop. And it didn't go as well as I think both parties would have liked. We dropped down to averaging like 24 points per game for the season. And in my opinion, if you're not hitting that 30 point per game, kind of that number, you're probably going to be struggling in this conference. There's a lot of good offenses in Conference USA. So I think we need to be consistent on offense. And then on defense, we have to prove that we can stop the run. We were kind of Jekyll and Hyde on defense last year. We were number 9 in the nation in pass defense, but we were number 109 or 107, somewhere near the bottom end in rushing defense. So we have to shore up that side of the ball and prove that we can get off the field on third down.
I know that's something that Ben was talking about. They feel really good about, at least that stable of backs that they've got there. But let's go through some of these names to know. I know you got a quarterback that we certainly should keep eyes on. If it's a WKU quarterback, you got to know who it is, anyways. But outside of that, and to talk a little bit about that depth chart, is there any funny business from Helton, or does it look pretty straightforward from your perspective?
Our depth chart is straightforward in the sense that it's numerical. So, from smallest to biggest is the Helton depth chart. I don't really understand that exercise, but that's what he's always done. But some names to look out for, obviously Maverick McIver, QB1. There's going to be a lot of expectations coming to Western Kentucky. Expect him to be near the top of the conference in passing yards and touchdowns. My prediction is he's going to be close to the top in the nation in passing yards and touchdowns. I think we can get back to that point. Caden Veltkamp was really good last year, especially that he didn't start till the third game of the season, and he still led the conference in passing. So, big shoes to fill, but Maverick is probably more than up to the task, bringing his OC with him. His main target is probably going to be Matthew Henry, FCS All-American wide receiver from Western Illinois. Big body, super athletic, can play on the outside and stretch the field. He's going to be in line to get a lot of targets. They also like Katie Hutchinson coming back. He's a returning guy, so you kind of know what you're getting with him. He had a big game versus Sam Houston last year. And then, looking at the other side of the ball defensively, the secondary is probably our strength. Still we have two returning guys back there in Kent Robinson and DeMarco Williams. Then we added, Braxton Myers and Almahi Ali, Jalen Emery, just some guys that I think are going to be really good on the back end. I expect our pass defense to be just as good. The defensive line is kind of be the biggest question mark, and can we just find a rotation of guys? We're going to have to rotate plenty of bodies in. Luckily, our staff really likes the guys that we have. I think we have a lot more size, a lot more depth, and hopefully can just get pressure on the quarterback and obviously contain that run.
Absolutely. Well, and as I talked on earlier before you got on, you did all the positional breakdowns. So if you really want to get more in depth with Topper football, I would highly encourage you to check out their YouTube, where they've gone through all of their positions one by one, episode by episode. But as we wrap up here, guys, the Vegas line 10.5, as they always say, good teams win, but great teams cover. I guess the question, Ben, I'll turn it back over to you here. 10.5. How do you feel the Bearcats as far as covering that line?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the same score prediction that I did on the podcast the other day. I think WKU wins at 42-28. I think this is going to be a shootout on both ends, both teams coming in with a lot of defensive question marks. So I think the scoring is going to be high, but WKU's got some more depth than Sam Houston does. Sam Houston's on the road, so I'm going to go 42-28 WKU, and they're going to cover the spread and hit the over for the game.
Moff, to you.
Yeah, actually, my score prediction was really close to that on our week 0 preview. I went with 42-24. So in that same ballpark, in that same mind frame of, just thinking that I think our offense is going to be further ahead than their defense. And, part of that is, again, playing in week 0 where maybe under the lights they haven't put all those new pieces together and aren't executing as smoothly as they would be in week 5 or 6 if this was just a normal, calendar conference game. So it's kind of good for us, but there's also, the element of surprise that, a Longo offense could have. I fully expect them to lean on the run and try to open up those explosive plays. And that was one of my keys to victory on our week 0 preview is we have to keep those explosive plays, those big plays in front of us, because last year, 2 of the touchdowns that Sam Houston scored were on third down plays that were just blown coverage, and they made a big play for a touchdown. So we have to avoid those big play touchdowns that we know Coach Longo is going to bring to this offense.
Well, Ben, I know you're going to make the trip to Bowling Green. We're going to have a CUSA podcast grouping there. Moff, let us know. I'll save my opinions. I've been there before. What should Ben know? I assume he's going in a media capacity. What does he need to know about that press box there in Bowling Green?
I mean, it's a good view. It's great. It's brand new. It still has the new tag on it from last year. It was first year they utilized it, so it's a nice space. We talked about some pregame food options, and if he's walking around on South Lawn, there's plenty of tailgating spots that are travel team friendly. Usually you're not going to find any hostility down there unless it's some college kids that have had a few too many drinks. Usually people are going to welcome you in and if you want to have a drink or a bite to eat. But yeah, the press box is solid. I think I haven't been in too many of them across the conference, but it's a really nice space to take in a game for sure.
And you have the benefit, Ben. You're not wearing blue.
Yeah, not wearing blue. I'll just be dressed casually in the press box. Not supposed to root for anyone or anybody, so I'll just be there covering the game, having a good time.
Absolutely. It is a working press box, as I say. No clapping, no cheering, no fun allowed at all. So, but guys, yep. I appreciate you taking the time to preview the Week 0 matchup. You, the listener, thanks for tuning in this week. Again, we're going to do this as a part of our roundtable throughout the season. So next week, unfortunately, there is no Conference USA game. We got a whole bunch of non-con. The preview that we have set aside for next week is going to be the UTEP-Utah State game. I think on paper, that's probably the best game. A lot of us are either playing FCS opponents or playing very big D1 opponents. So I think that's a good mix. So I look forward to that. Of course, having our friends over at Minor Talk to preview that, and we'll have those over at Utah State Aggie News are going to be helping us along there. So look forward to that. Jake Gibson will be our host for that one next week. But thanks again, Conseco Group, for sponsoring our Week 0 preview of Sam Houston. Big thanks again to March to the Pod and Topper Talk. And until next time, y'all, we'll see you